On a fine sunny day in Latvia, welcome to the 7th event of the Nordic Baltic Business Forum series, and the second event this year focusing specifically on the EU Green Deal and Nordic Baltic partnership. Today's overarching theme will be building sustainable trade and logistics networks between the Nordic and Baltic countries, with an excellent lineup of speakers, both from the public and private sector. My name is Baiba Rubesa, and I will be your moderator. The event is organized by the Norwegian, Swedish, and Finnish Chambers of Commerce in close partnership with the Nordic Council of Ministers office in Latvia and with the support of the Norwegian, Swedish, and Finnish Embassies in Latvia. Today's event also takes place in liaison with Nordic Days, now in Ventspils. So before we get to the core program, I would like to invite the director of the Nordic Council in Latvia, Stefan Eriksson, for the official opening remarks.
Thank you, Baiba. I will just say some short introductory words to open this very important event. I'm here in Ventspils together with my Nordic colleagues, the Nordic ambassadors, for the Nordic Days. This is an event that we every year arrange in the Latvia's regions. This time the turn has come to Ventspils. And thanks to a very timely initiative by the Nordic Chambers of Commerce and other partners, we are doing this event. Well, due to the circumstances that are a bit special, as we all are aware of, we cannot do it fully as was planned originally, but I'm glad to say that I'm here together with my Danish and Norwegian colleagues at the Ventspils High Technology Park, learning more about their work. And the theme of this small conference or seminar, what we choose to call it, is how to build sustainable trade and logistic networks in the Nordic Baltic region, something that I think is of high importance really for all of us. So we're very glad that we can do this event in a bit different way than was planned. So regards from us here in Ventspils, and I wish you all an interesting and fruitful afternoon today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Now, trade and shipping are actually ancient areas of human interaction. But today, though, they seem to be in the middle of their own paradigm shift. Due to the demands of climate change and changes in trade routes, expectations by customers, companies, and governments as to what trade and logistics networks deliver is changing. The demand for sustainable solutions for our lives is changing also the role of ports, thus shipping and logistics. When was the last time any of you woke up to read the news that the President of the United States of America has met with the heads of American ports to not only discuss improvements in the supply chain, but sustainable port management too? I don't know about you, but I did this morning. Now, our program is very dense. So before we commence, here are some housekeeping rules and information. As our goal is to explore opportunities for creating new and sustainable trade networks, partnerships, and solutions that would help us recover from the COVID-19 pandemic and help us achieve the ambitious climate goals, today's program is organized essentially into 3 parts. The first one, gaining the big picture from the European Commission and the Nordic perspective. Secondly, learning what Latvia's action plan towards the implementation of climate neutrality goals and the role of ports and the logistics sector in achieving them are. And thirdly, exploring what the outlook of shipping companies and energy producers is towards their role in decarbonizing trade. Now, if you would like to raise any questions, please don't hesitate and proceed to www.slide.do enter the code in Slido of #1 and then 5 times the 4, so 144444, which you see on the screen, and post your question. In today's event, I will bring you questions to the attention of our speakers. So the first speaker. Martin Zemit is the European Commission's stalwart representative in Riga, the right fellow to illuminate all of us about the impact of the European Green Deal and blue economy and what it would have on mobility, transport, logistics, and ports. Martin, the digital floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Baiba, and it is a privilege and an honor to be addressing such a great network of Nordic Baltic experts, business, the public sector. I would have very much liked to address you in person. You know that more than anyone, I love live performances and live interactions, but let's hope that rather sooner than later, we're able to go back to some sort of normalcy and engage in person. And while I load up my presentation, let me express how thankful I am for the opportunity to be talking on the European Green Deal and the blue economy. We all need to put more green into blue, regardless of whether in the private sector or the public sector. The European Green Deal is something that derives from our global ambition to be climate neutral. We all recall, or most of us would recall, the Paris Agreement, which was signed in 2015, which was a global ambition to move towards climate neutrality. And we all have only one planet, but there's been no industrial society, at least in the West, which has reached its level of development by not exceeding the planet's ecological boundaries. We are, in fact, living as if we had 3 planets, but we only have one. And hence, the countries of the globe have joined hands, and established both the global sustainable development goals and the Paris Agreement. And now in the running up to COP 2026, another round of global climate negotiations, it is the right time to take stock of where we are. But European continent is the continent which aspires to be climate neutral by 2050. And this is not just an aspiration. This is, in fact, a climate law. This has been enshrined and agreed by the heads of state and government. That is to say that by 2050, the European continent wants to be net zero or climate neutral. We will not eliminate all the emissions, of course, by 2050, but we will be able to develop carbon sinks, such as forests, and also, I'm sure, carbon capture and storage technologies. Regardless of this, we have a lot of work to do to decarbonize the various industries, the homes, the cars, the mobility. There's a lot of work out there. But the good news is that the European countries collectively have been able to reduce emissions by 20% from the baseline of 1990, while growing at the economy at more than 60%. So we have done this momentous task of reducing emissions while growing in the past. And the ambition is that we can continue this trend. But of course, that will require a lot of concerted effort from all industries taken together, and notably also the trade and maritime industry. The European Green Deal is not just an ambition. It is, in fact, Europe's new growth strategy. Europe aims to change the growth model and put sustainable, not as a separate climate or environmental policy, but put sustainability or decarbonization at the root of every policy that we do. But of course, in parallel, we need to develop the blue economy, which is all that economy that is around the seas and oceans, writ large, both the shipbuilding and maritime activities, coastal tourism, and also new emerging sectors. So we need to develop the green and the blue in parallel. Now, what is the European Green Deal? A little bit in more detail. It is, of course, increasing EU's climate ambition for 2030 and 2050. It is supplying clean, affordable, and secure energy. So both in terms of energy production, but also in terms of energy consumption and the way we deal with energy throughout the value chains. It is about mobilizing industry for a clean and circular economy. It is building and renovating in a way that is resource efficient. It is also the zero pollution ambition that European continent aspires to be zero pollution by 2050, by the same deadline. And of course, this is also about preserving and restoring ecosystems, about greening the common agricultural policy and common fisheries policy. And it is also, of course, accelerating the shift to sustainable and smart mobility, of which the green economy is very much a part of. Of course, this will not come cheap. This will require investment from both the public and largely also from the private sector, to which I will come towards the end of my presentation. But our ambition is also leave no one behind, so that this change of the economic model, this transition, is not unfair, that it does not leave any region or any industry behind. Of course, there will be winners and losers. Of course, companies will have to change their business models, and there will be regions which will suffer more than others, which are more dependent on fossil fuels. But our ambition is not to lessen the quality of life. It is to create new opportunities, new chances for both the industry and others. So Fit for 55, this is the package which was presented by the Commission in the July of this year. And this piece of the puzzle is a set of interlocking legal regulations and directives aiming to create the base, the legal base for the green transition in the European continent. And this is a number of different legal provisions relating from areas such as forests to energy efficiency, not only in buildings, but in transport and in industry. It is new provisions for extending the emissions trading, the European cap and trade system. It is a new carbon border adjustment mechanism so as to prevent carbon leakage. There's also a provision for the climate social fund. We all know that energy prices are rising rapidly, and there are some pundits which are arguing that this is, in fact, even before the European Green Deal is put into effect, this is deriving from European Green Deal. And in fact, there is a provision in place to help the vulnerable. So there is a lot of pieces of the puzzle which must come together. And let's now focus and zero in a little bit on the transport sector. Now, transport is an emitting sector. It emits about 1/3 of European emissions. And if you look at the transport portfolio, of course, road transport, be it private cars or vans or heavy duty vehicles, which account for more than 70% of the emissions. Aviation accounts for about 1/8. It's about 14%. But also waterborne transport, even though it's not the biggest emitter, it does contribute its fair share of emissions to the portfolio. Railways is a nice one, especially electrified railways, and that's also where the modal shift is happening, and Europe is building, of course, more railways to energize this modal shift. So this is the transport emissions portfolio. Now, moving on to a little bit zeroing in on the sectors. Of course, transport is a big sector. And there is road transport, which accounts for about 1/5 of the emissions. Then we have aviation, about 3.8% of the total emissions, not just of the transport emissions. And then you have the maritime sectors, which account for about 4% of the emissions. And therefore, and unfortunately, in the transport sector, unlike in some other sectors, where we have been able to reverse the trend, where the emissions are in fact being reduced, in the maritime sector and the transport sector in general, unfortunately, in the last 10 years in the European continent, we have not been able to reduce emissions, except for the COVID effect, but which is, of course, expected to be short-lived. There was a short dip during the COVID times because of the decreasing economic activity, but that's of course, is a short solace. So the European Commission is proposing a number of important things which will affect the maritime industry in quite profound and significant ways. And one is the extension of the emissions trading system to the maritime sector, starting with 2023, with a phase-in period, not immediately. And the focus, of course, would be sort of on the large emitters, on the large container and passenger ships above the 5,000 gross tonnage, which in fact account for more than 90% of the CO2 emissions in the maritime sector. So the focus is not on the sort of the small fishing vessels, by the coast, but on the sort of the big emitters, which produce a lot of emissions, which consume a lot of energy. And this will not affect absolutely everyone. It will affect all the inter-EU traffic, but 50% of the extra-EU traffic.
I'm really sorry.
Yes.
You have 1 more minute to go.
1 more minute to go. Then we
give you 2, but really 2.
Okay, beautiful. The other thing which the EU is proposing is the Fuel EU Maritime Directive, and that is also a game changer. It is a way to decarbonize ships, and of course, we're climate neutral, and we try to be climate neutral, and we also try to be technology neutral. So the Commission is not prescribing any one type of energy, which would be the aim. Rather, the Commission is proposing targets and limits to greenhouse gas intensity. So the regulation proposes to reduce the greenhouse gas intensity of the energy used on board the ships by 2% by 2025, and ultimately in iterations by 75% by 2050. So extending the ETS and decarbonizing the ships. Another thing which I must mention before I finish is that also there will be an obligation for the most polluting ships to connect to onshore power supply or use zero emission technologies at berth when they are standing at port. Of course, if they're standing for longer than 2 hours, with a few other limitations, but these are three quite important changes in the works, in progress, in the making, which will, of course, quite profoundly affect the shipping industry. And most operators and ports will have to take this into mind. And of course, the idea is to put a price on carbon, to price carbon what it costs, and put the maritime sector into the carbon pricing system. This is here where I stop. We have big changes coming. We have legislative changes. Of course, this will require a lot of investment, a lot of cooperation between the private and the public sectors. But the European Commission is there to help with regulation, with advice, and also with quite a bit of funding. With this, I stop and hand it over to Baiba.
Martin, thank you very much for now. Take a short break. I'm very sorry to try to cut you off, but I'm sure you're not going to be the only one. Let me now, first of all, bring in a Nordic view, and then let's have a slight discussion with all three of you together once we have the next intervention. You know, globally, it's no secret that the Nordic countries are seen as most progressive, diligent, and able to execute climate footprint reduction exercises, as I would call them. I would urge you to listen to what the leaders of the renowned Nordic energy research will share with us on Nordic clean energy scenarios. They have a lot to say, but unfortunately today there's a limit of 10 minutes again, though you can submit questions to both gentlemen on Slido. Remember, it's Slido and then #1 and 5 times the 4. Klaus Skutte, Kevin Jonsen, the digital floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I will begin. My name is Klaus Skutte, and I'm the CEO of Nordic Energy Research. Like Matthias, I'm very sorry that I couldn't be there together with you and Stefan in Ventspils, but I hope to do that next time. Next slide, please. So Nordic Energy Research is a Nordic institution under the auspice of the Nordic Council of Ministers. We finance energy research and facilitate energy cooperation between the Nordic countries, Iceland, Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, the Faroe Islands, Greenland, and Åland, as well as between the Nordic countries and our neighboring countries in the Arctic and the Baltic countries. Next slide, please. So the Baltic Nordic countries have a unique and a long-standing cooperation on energy. We at Nordic Energy Research, we have facilitated governmental network and working groups, as well as scenario, and we have also even a Baltic Nordic Energy Research program together, where we have local partners from Latvia as well as the other Baltic countries. As you see, just within the last 3 years, we have had a couple of research projects. We have new one going on, so it's a continued program. We have done analysis between the cooperation between the Nordic and the Baltics, as well as we have a mobility program between the countries in the Nordic Baltic region. I can also mention that within the Nordic Energy Research Program, we have a research program on maritime transport and energy research. And there we see that the future balance between direct electrification as well as power to X and hydrogen to electric fuels like ammonia for shipping and other subjects are really hot subjects right now that can affect the entire energy demand as well as on the cooperation. And also to put it in a larger perspective, when you have the Nordic Prime Minister's joint declaration on carbon neutrality in 2019, and with the common vision of the Nordic region to become the most integrated and sustainable region in the world, it's obvious to look for common solutions. Therefore, I believe it's time to further the Nordic Baltic energy cooperation with the green transition as new framework. So I therefore greatly appreciate this seminar on sustainable trade and logistic networks between the Nordic and the Baltic. And I'm very pleased that we have the opportunity to present some of our scenarios. With these words, I thank you, and I'll let the word pass on to my colleague, Kevin.
So thank you, Klaus, and greetings from Oslo. My name is Kevin Johnson. I work as a senior advisor at Nordic Energy Research and has been doing so for the last 5 years. I've also had the pleasure to lead our effort on the Nordic Clean Energy Scenarios project that you will get a brief introduction to today. Stay with me. So first of all, as mentioned, we have been working with this type of analysis for the last 10 years, with the first analysis being done in cooperation with the IEA in 2013. Then we did a follow-up in 2016, but as most of you who follow the energy space probably knows, there has happened quite a lot since 2016. So we wanted to do a new analysis and get some new results in the Nordic region. And that's why we decided to commit to or commission a new Nordic Clean Energy Scenarios, also to look into how to achieve the goals of the Nordic Prime Ministers. I would also like to say that I've had the pleasure to lead another project where we work together with the Baltic countries, the Baltic Energy Technology Scenarios, where we looked more in detail into the Baltic energy system and how the Baltic countries could achieve the EU 2030 targets, but also looking forward towards 2050. And this was an analysis that we did in cooperation with the Baltic ministries as well. So moving on to the Nordic Clean Energy Scenarios project. So first of all, we had a large consortium of well-educated researchers and consultants, over 30, working together with us on this, being led by Energiforsk, but also the Energy Modeling Lab. We're very happy to have had their input and their efforts into this project. So what we did in this project was that we decided to develop 3 storylines. We developed a carbon neutral Nordic scenario that translates into a least cost pathway for achieving the Nordic countries' national targets. But we also wanted to look into some different storylines that could emerge as well. So we developed a Nordic powerhouse scenario where the Nordic countries take a more active role in the overall European energy transition, supplying more electricity and more power to X fuels, and also working as a carbon capture and storage hub for Northern Europe. And then again, a carbon neutral behavior scenario where we wanted to look into how the behavioral aspects of the Nordic population could play into the energy transition. So in this scenario, we'll look into how, for instance, the effect of the air passenger traffic not bouncing up above the 2019 level will influence the energy system. And based on these 3 storylines, we found that most solutions could be gathered into what we call 5 solution tracks towards carbon neutrality.
Kevin,
so what you first
have
see
2
here
more
is
minutes.
the fossil fuels. It's the kind of the suspect that we would like to get rid of. And in general, for the 3 different scenarios, we find that the most efficient way to reduce emissions is direct electrification. So for instance, going from an internal combustion engine to an EV, or direct electrification of industrial processes. We, of course, also recognize that there are areas where this is not as easy. So we also look into 3 other technologies that could help us in the transition, namely power to X, bioenergy, and also carbon capture and storage that also plays into this. On top of this, of course, as mentioned, we have behavioral change that could help ease the transition. So it's not a substitute for the other technological changes, but it could ease the transition if the behavior goes in the right way. But here's also a warning that the behavior could also help making the transition harder if the population make changes in their energy consumption so that the energy consumption goes up as well. And based on these results, we landed on 4 target areas for Nordic collaboration, where we in the report saw that Nordic collaboration could benefit the transition. So first of all, we saw that there could be a benefit from coordinating and collaborate on the Nordic power infrastructure. We saw that there was a big possibility to cooperate on integrated offshore wind and grid development. We found that a common vision for the role of Power-to-X would be very beneficial, having in mind that the amount of Power-to-X produced greatly influences the need for electricity production. And then lastly, we also find that there would be a lot of benefits from cooperating together on a Nordic carbon capture and storage strategy. So what I've tried to kind of find based on my earlier work in the Baltics, but also on this Nordic project, and up for discussion later today, is possible areas for Baltic-Nordic collaboration. So could there, for instance, be a benefit from working together on offshore wind energy hubs? Could there be a benefit on working together on common carbon capture and storage infrastructure in the Baltics, working on power infrastructure planning, and also on how to sustainably produce biofuels in the future? These are some of the topics that I would like to raise. And then since we are short in time, I would say that this is just a brief presentation of a vast amount of results that we have. So please go to our website, nordicenergy.org, if you would like to read more. Here you can also order the report physically and read it digitally. And also just mentioning that there's a lot of other supplementary material like open access models, technology catalog, and statistics database there that you can look into if you're really interested. And with that, thank you for the attention.
Kevin and Klaus, thank you very much for the very swift intervention. To those watching, I can certainly tell you it is very worthwhile having a look at the material. I had the privilege of perusing it in advance. But I would have a question to Kevin. I think that the 4 areas of collaboration that you outlined for the Nordics, and then in your own way transpose back to what the levels of cooperation could be for the between actually the Baltic and the Nordics. Are there any tangible results or collaboration already in any of the areas that you have mentioned?
So I know that there's a cooperation between the Nordic and the Baltic TSOs looking into offshore grids and also offshore wind development. On what level this is, I'm not that sure, but I know they're talking together. As Klaus mentioned, we also have the Nordic or the NGCCUS group, where there's also participation from the Baltic governments as well. So they're at least following the discussion we're having in the Nordics. So I think we're getting there, but it could also be, of course, it could also be always be increased as well.
Great movement. Thank you very much. And let me just ask one question to Martin, who I hope is still online with the EU. I was struck by the slide that highlighted financing the transition while leaving nobody behind. Do you actually think this is impossible, one of the most unequal countries in the European Union?
This is a challenge, and it will be a challenge. Energy transitions are never easy. I mean, you can draw scenarios, but at any scenario of any transition, any type of reform, there are always winners and losers. But the ambition is so that we get social acceptance for this, so that we don't lose people along the way, is to design the transition in a way that we keep the issue of social equality in mind. And there's different ways how to go about it. I mean, this week alone, the European Commission published a toolbox, what the governments can do, for instance, in support of the vulnerable households, even in this hopefully short-lived energy crisis that we're living through. But also we have to recognize that we have to price carbon, and the price of carbon will drive up the price of the fossil fuels. And the more dependent we'll be as economies on fossil fuels, the more vulnerable we'll be. So that's why, you know, this energy transition, hopefully in cooperation with the Nordic countries, as we are already in energy sector, and you know, we're part of the same stock exchange, Nord Pool spot. Hopefully there will be more of that, and that these costs can be sort of distributed in more ways. But to Baiba, this will be, of course, a challenge, as you rightly point out.
So, question to you. If there were only one action that needs to be taken in Latvia to really sort of power start the EU Green Deal, what should Latvia do? What's that first step?
This is not something that the Commission has not been trying to underline and stress for a while. I think if we look critically at the energy generation sectors of the three Baltics, but also in relation to the Baltics and Nordics, we see Latvia lagging behind in one very important source of energy, and that is wind energy. We see very few wind farms onshore. We see none offshore. There is a project with Estonia with about 100 megawatt capacity, but that's offshore, and that's a bit of a long-term project. We're lagging behind in terms of installed wind capacity for a number of reasons, for not in my backyard, for difficulty of municipalities to sell the idea to the citizens, also, you know, other types of issues. But all in all, at the end of the day, Latvia is lagging behind in terms of wind, and also in terms of solar. If in wind it's lagging behind perhaps 10 times by a factor of 10, in terms of solar, it's starting to lag behind by a factor of 20. So there's a lot of work to do in alternative energy.
Thank you very much, Martin. Zemit is from the European Commission in Latvia. Now, the hardest aspect of tackling climate change issues is the fact that emissions or rising waters do not respect national borders. Understanding and engagement for what is needed is actually a collective challenge. So as we are focused on ports and shipping today, I look forward to hearing what Latvia's Minister of Transport, Tālis Linkaits, will share. What is Latvia actually doing to achieve climate neutrality goals in the realm of institutional behavior, alternative fuels, or state investments? Honorable Minister Linkaits, lūdzu.
Dear colleagues, I'm very glad to participate in today's event and share my thoughts on the topic of Green Deal and port development. Today's theme is very important, and I'm happy that so many of you are interested in it. The overall goal of the European Union's Green course is to make Europe climate neutral by 2050. The current ambition is to reduce greenhouse gas emission by 40% by 2030 compared to 1990 levels. In its 2020 communication on strategy for sustainable and smart mobility, the European Commission has outlined the direction in which the transport sector will move with a view to climate neutrality in 2050, which will have the most direct impact on the logistics, including ports. Sustainability and digitalization are the key words for this common direction. Similarly, a European-level priority of shifting a large proportion of road freight to rail and inland waterways remains relevant and has revived in terms of climate goals. In its long-term strategy, the European Commission emphasizes that ports are and will be important for international connectivity for the European economy as a whole, while becoming emission-free mobility transport hubs connecting all relevant modes of transport. New technologies, sustainable solutions, and innovation are crucial for the implementation of climate goals. And we can already see that Latvian entrepreneurs are working in this direction. Consequently, the current and future multi-annual budget of the European Union will go in the direction of sustainability and innovation, followed by overall financial sector assessing the allocation of funding and its compliance with the green direction. In July this year, the European Commission presented a package of proposals to help achieve the 55% reduction target. The proposals in this package are directly relevant to ports and their operation. For example, the alternative fuel infrastructure regulation, which obliges ports to provide shoreside electricity to ships. On the other hand, the Fuel EU maritime regulation aims to increase the share of marine renewable and low-emission fuels and the obligation to use shore-based connections in ports. The maritime sector is also being included in the emission trading scheme, and the new maritime tax is planned through the revision of the Energy Tax Directive. These discussions on proposals have begun and will not be easy, but the direction is clear, and it is important for the sector to look at how to streamline its operations, services, processes in order to develop and grow in this transformation process. Of course, the logistics sector is global, and the players involved operate not only in the European Union, but also in the global market. Therefore, fair competition rules must be taken into account in any new regulation that is developed at European level. Latvia's National Energy and Climate Plan outlines a set of national measures with actions until 2030 and is based on the principle of energy efficiency first and aims to promote the development of a climate-neutral economy in a sustainable, competitive, secure, and market-based manner. Also, the Latvian Transport Development Guidelines for period up to 2027, which were recently adopted by the government, set out the goal of creating an integrated transport system that ensures smart and sustainable mobility, promotes countries' growth and development, as well as contributes to the transition to a low-carbon economy. These guidelines provide solutions for cost-effective climate and environmental measures that contribute to climate neutrality and reduce the negative environmental impact of transport. A quality and competitive infrastructure that contributes to the overall economic growth of the country is undeniably essential. If we focus specifically on ports, practical measures such as the electrification of port berths and the availability of alternative fuels are essential to achieve climate neutrality. The transport plan proposes reconstruction of hydrotechnical structures and improving navigation conditions, including deepening port depths by 2027. Other practical measures include obtaining of equipment and watercraft for environmental protection and marine safety. It is also necessary to build up appropriate infrastructure in ports. In addition, in 20 core network ports, it is necessary to develop road and rail delivery infrastructure. These all are specific, sharply defined measures that need to be implemented to involve ports in reaching targets set by the European Green Deal. Currently, Latvia is drafting its port development strategy. We do it together with stakeholders and companies working in logistics and freight transport sector. And we are open for suggestions and proposals to the port strategy. And I hope today's discussion and presentations will provide valuable input to our port development strategy. Once again, thank you for inviting me, and I wish you excellent day of discussions.
Mr. Minister, thank you very much for finding the time to join us. I've had several questions sent in to me to pose, if I may. The very first one is actually a continuation of what you ended your intervention with, which is really the port strategy, or what the role, how you see the role of Latvian ports in the implementation of the Green Deal. And you just outlined some of the facets that you seem still to be working on. Do you have any notion of where we are compared to Lithuanian, Estonian, or even Nordic ports? How do Latvian ports measure in that whole environment?
I believe that Latvian ports are in a similar level as our neighboring ports, since we all are working in the same Baltic Ports organization, and the port community is comparing its strategies and tasks. Similarly, I know that Latvian ports have conducted several conferences and research on how jointly tackle issues like electrification of the port industry, digitalization of the port services, as well as how to achieve the green the Green Deal goals set by the European Commission. So I would say the Baltic ports are at the same level. There is a lot we can learn from each other, but of course there are still a lot to do, and I very much hope that the Latvian port development strategy that we're working on will contribute to it.
Okay, now these days we can observe Lithuania's Transport Minister Marius Skuodis actively engaging with Canadian and American ports and logistics providers. Could you perhaps share what the specific planned measures are to increase Latvia's competitiveness in the field of international logistics? Moreover, for example, what would be your expectations and messages to private investors, shipping and energy companies who are researching and evaluating the possibilities to create transportation branches to Latvia and invest in Latvia in areas related to logistics and energy? So it's strategy, energy, logistics, competitiveness.
Yeah, Latvian ports are open to investment and open to cooperation with other international partners. I would say that during the last several years, we have experienced strategic change from the so-called traditional transportation of strategic goods like oil and coal to more value-added activities in the port territories. For example, Riga Port Authority is working together with the Duisburg port to develop industrial zone next to the current port terminals, and is evaluating different options how to attract large-scale investors in this industrial zone. Similarly, also Ventspils and Liepāja ports are looking for value-added products that could substitute the coal and oil shipments. We as a country, we provide and will provide good corporate governance of the port authorities, will provide good investment incentives. And as example, I would like to mention recent decision of Line to increase activities both in Liepāja and in Ventspils, with providing larger ships and believing in the logistics and transport services that Latvia provides and will provide for their activities.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Later today, we have Stena Line speaking here, actually, that will describe their fleet and their ambition, which should be rather interesting. 2 more questions, and they are more related to reducing our carbon footprint. Do you believe, or actually I would say, when will Latvia achieve a carbon neutral transit corridor?
I think that is a task what we have to strive for. When exactly it will happen, it very much depends on all involved parties in this corridor. Our task from the government side is to promote the activities, to support financially with investment where it is needed and where the governments are allowed to do so. But the general direction, especially in the transport and logistics sector, is up to the actors of the sector. I believe we will achieve it, but when it happens, we'll see.
Okay. And in that light, the last question. Today, Latvia's major challenge is the ability to manage the COVID pandemic. Are there lessons to be learned, such as the need for a cohesive government strategy and execution on sustainability issues, as opposed, for example, to individual ministry efforts? If the key ministries to ensure Latvia successfully engage in the EU's Green Deal are transport, environment, economy, and finance, are you all aligned on sustainable footprint management to be able to address the inherent dilemmas that need resolution for success, much as we find inherent dilemmas, or at least seemingly so, in managing the COVID pandemic?
Well, you have prepared very complex question.
That's the last one.
Of course, the COVID pandemic has shown us that we as a country can overcome serious challenges, unexpected challenges that we are facing already for more than 1 year. And we also see that the digitalization level of our public services and our private services helps us working at a distance, providing services to our customers, our clients. In that respect, I see that the level of digitalization, level of internet connections in Latvia helps us in comparison to maybe some other well-developed countries, for example, Germany. At the same time, I have to admit that public authorities are not always the best ones in working swiftly and smoothly in addressing the challenges. We see that also horizontal coordination of different tasks could have been better. We see these challenges also when we are working on our national energy and climate plan, that there are still a lot work to do together. We have very good cooperation with our Ministry of Environment and Regional Development on setting and working on specific measures related to green transport. But still, what I haven't seen, for example, is green taxation policy. That is something that we must have, and I hope in coming years Latvia will deliver it. Thank you.
Minister Linkaits, thank you very, very much for your time and your responses in depth. Thank you very much. I will now turn to the head of the Latvian Investment and Development Agency of Latvia, Kaspars Rožkalns, who will introduce us all to one of Latvia's key regional programs, Mission C 2030. What is this program all about, Mr. Loškauns?
Thank you, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to be here. And is this the right time that I can share the presentation, right?
Yep.
Perfect. I'll try to share the screen and see how that goes. And then I'll try to explain how the Mission C works. So let me start that the main priorities of investment and development agencies in Latvia currently is three. So first of all, to attract high value-added investment by fostering innovation and improving overall the Latvian business environment. To boost export growth, therefore all that our priority investors are focused on export. And the third task that is last but not least, to coordinate a unified state image. And let me explain very briefly how that all combines in one picture. The first of all, we have 6 smart sectors that are priority for investments. It's biomedicine, bioeconomy, smart energy, smart materials and photonics, ICT or IT and communications, and smart city. This is the key focuses where the Latvian future we see in investment and definitely in development line. To boost those sectors, we have in our agency arsenal, let's say so. We have everything starting from the idea, then getting boost in the business innovation, and helping to export and helping to attract the new markets. In overall, in different government incentives in the economic transformation and green initiatives in the digital transformation, Latvia as a whole will offer 8 billion euros till 2027. And what we have done is to fast track this investment that are connected to the smart sectors. And this is something that we see was missing, and it is the first step ahead. That if we prioritize what exactly we need, and I could jump back to this. Like we have 6 sectors, so how exactly the government helps them to be faster to the market. And this is the green corridor that is working now from April with 4 criteria that you have to fill out 3 of the 4. And it means that in those specific sectors, investment of 5 million euros, creating new jobs, export in 3 years over 3 million euros, and investment in R&D over 250K. If you would qualify, your investment project qualifies to this, then the service from the government, not only LIA, but from the old government, it includes residence permits, it includes construction permits, it includes the evaluation of environment permits that government have to serve you 2 times faster than legislation states currently. And we have currently 9 projects in the green corridor, and they're very happy to be there. Even this is no money. They are just the government are showing that we can move faster than the legislation says. We don't need 30 days to reply to each letter. We can do it double the speed if your investment projects are priority. So how to sweeten the deal? We have incentives for investors for staff training. That's the problem number 1. That all the investors say that, hey guys, that the staff is lacking, and you have to do something about it. And therefore, the 250K per project is something that is available for all the investors that wants to train the staff. Therefore, this is in the pipeline. In the future, we have this from the Restructuring and Resilience Fund for the economic transformation. It is 82.5 million euros, mostly focusing on how to support with different instruments, mostly grants, focusing on digitalization. And this is something that we see in the future, that how to push forward, how to help the companies to innovate, how to help the companies to get to the Horizon Europe money. And again, this is going to be a very important instrument to this economic transformation that we talk all about.
Mr. Roskans, you have 4 minutes max
Perfect.
for the Sea Mission 2030.
Yes, I'm very good on my time. So to finalize the instrument, 80 million euros allocated for industrial parks that will be the places or locations for those 6 smart sectors where to enter them. And now, when we have the instrument, we have the vision on the sectors. The question is how to align the policies. There, Mission C 2030 comes into the picture. That we see that there was the gold rush, there was the oil rush, and the next one is the water rush. And the Mission C, we call it connected to the sea because it's Baltic Sea, but actually it is all about the new economy for clean water everywhere. It is included the digital twin, the smart city solutions, everything that you can connect to the digital transformation, to the Green Deal, is kind of part of the sustainable way of living. And therefore, one of the key parts is this clean water. We see currently the 1 billion people is lacking access to the clean water, and in 2030, it's going to be 3 billion people. Therefore, we have to have here the solution and where to sandbox, where to stress test, and where to innovate. And this is the Mission C is actually the place where the legislation would be sandboxed, and we would be able to generate innovative ideas to align the government policies of the future, to gather the data, to make the data-based government policies, and to stress test the solution. From the entrepreneurs, they will be able to align with the value chains, how they would be able to sell the product, the service for the 3 billion people that will lack the water. And here we will be able to test how the legislation of the future, that everybody talks about the Green Deal, but how to simultaneously implement the Green Deal policies is not very clear. Therefore, the sandbox approach would be this, where we can stress this, where we can add the innovation part, and then scale it up to whatever it works, scale it up to the country level. That is the Mission C approach. In combination, how the Mission C is the tool, how we'll be able to implement the policies of European Green Deal. That is it from my side, and I really think that I made it on time. Thank you very much.
You did great. Thank you very much. So 2 questions. When I look at your presentation, especially also in the end around the sort of blue part, the blue economy part of your presentation, if there's just one action that needs to be taken, let's say by a company in Latvia to jump into the sandbox, what needs to be done?
Yep. First of all, we have to design the sandbox. Therefore, what needs to be done, it's missionlatvia.com, and you have to subscribe. So we will be able to join those companies to the design thinking laboratories, let's say so, where we will design what is actually the need, not only by Latvians, but NBA countries, together with the Nordic institutions that we know, like Helicom in Finland. They have a lot of research done how to make the blue economy really ready. But the problem is it's lacking the place where to try to test those policies in the real life. So
did I hear correctly that all you have to do is log on to Mission Clean Water?
Latvia, missionlatvia.com.
Missionlatvia.com for the C2030 sandbox application. Okay. Second question, completely different. But you are, at the end of the day, one of the people promoting good business in the region. Now, we know that the pandemic has changed some trading patterns and some expectations. In the business world, especially in the companies that I work with, we increasingly hear of a need for Latvian or Baltic nearshoring strategies, which is nearshoring from Asia to the Baltic. What do you think? Is there any work underway to actually strategically find benefit for nearshoring for us?
On the nearshoring part, we see that is already happening. The strategy to get more companies interested is that you have to have the product, you have to have the business environment. And again, this comes back to the sandbox. That the problem with the legislation is it's easy. I believe the Foreign Investors Council in Latvia, they say it's 47 problems that we have to fix. 47 priorities that needs to be changed, so we would be number one. But the problem is, if you have 47, it's very hard to fix them all at the same time.
Yeah.
Therefore, it is impossible. Therefore, what we have to do is we have to gather around with the NBA partners to figure it out what is the nearshoring. Because for the Latvian part, we don't want to be closer China. What we want to be an innovation partner, and this is important part. But we have to jump like frog leap forward with we don't want to take the factory, let's say, one-on-one what was in China and copy paste here in Latvia, because we're lacking energy resources, we're lacking human resources, etc. What we want is here we want to create the factory of the future that would substitute the need, and this is to create those really Industry 4.0 manufacturing plants. It takes a lot of resources, it takes a lot of risk, and there that we see this is that all the instruments are heading to this way. Therefore, the nearshoring is not just we will be closer and cheaper. We will probably be closer. That is true. But we will definitely be what we want to be. We want to be a partner, not somebody that you only order something, but actually somebody who can deliver not only the product, but also the innovation part.
Thank you, Mr. Roškalns, the head of the Latvian Investment and Development Agency. Thank you very much. And we move to our next speaker. Let me note that anybody who wants to pose a question on Slido, please go ahead, hashtag 14444, 5 times the 4. We already have 2 questions while the minister was speaking, and we will try to get a response, a direct response for you, though some of the replies or answers were implied in what he presented. Now, when I was leading the Rail Baltica project, for 3 years I spoke about the importance of moving the logistics business from road to electric rail to significantly reduce our carbon footprint and find excellent, sustainable, multimodal solutions for cargo. But trade and logistics don't work without excellence in shipping. In the Baltic region, we rarely home in on the shipping business at all, except for seeing some of those diesel fume belching ships on the Baltic Sea horizon when suntanning on our sandy shores. So the role of shipping companies in decarbonizing trade is essential if we wish to succeed in being sustainability leaders in the region. We're privileged to have 2 great shipping companies share their view, Samskip and Stena Line, in 2 rather exciting presentations. Thus, I'm delighted to first introduce Erik Levenhaupt, Head of Sustainability at Stena Line Group, to kick off the topic. Mr. Levenhaupt, the digital floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. I will try to upload a little presentation here. Voila, I hope you see this. Let me know if there are any technical glitches.
Not yet. Now we have it. Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. Now we're okay.
No glitches yet.
Yeah.
So I was asked to present a little about our company and the role of shipping companies in reducing carbon emissions, and specifically in the Baltic. So I wanted to highlight the company I work for, the work we do in sustainability, some of the targets and projects that we have, the new ships that was already mentioned by the minister, and the environmental features and more importantly, what's next. So Stena is a family-owned conglomerate. It's based out of Gothenburg in Sweden. There are a number of companies involving wind power, recycling, property, and most importantly, shipping. So Stena Line is one of the companies in the group, and our operations is spread across Europe. We connect Europe for a sustainable future, as we say, and we'd like to think of ourselves as an important part of European trade, transport, and travel. So our segment is RoPax and RoRos, and as you can see on the right there is the type of ships that we operate. So it's rolling cargo, mainly lorries, trailers, but also, of course, passengers and passenger cars. We have a significant presence within the Baltic, including the Nynäshamn to Ventspils route. In total, we operate 36 vessels out of 18 routes. We move around 2 million freight units every year. And we like to say that we're on a sustainable journey. Connecting Europe for a sustainable future is not only empty words. We have, since we started my little department and long before that, been working with environmental features, with safety, equality, and so on. So the approach we have is quite broad. We're working with both our onboard assortment, moving out single-use plastics, ensuring we have eco-label detergents, etc. But we also use with larger projects, like we did the world's first methanol to dual fuel conversion on a large RoPax a couple of years ago. You may have read about Maersk ordering a number of dual fuel methanol container ships. Well, we have one in operation since a few years back. We're working with the footprint we have on the shore side, and we're working with electrification, both with shore power, also with battery hybrids, and with the ultimate ambition of having a fully electric ship, actually two, before 2030, operating on the Gothenburg to Frederikshamn route. How do we structure ourselves within our sustainable work? Well, we have a number of focus areas, and the two most important to us is challenges, not only for Stena Line, but for the industry as a whole. So gender equality and clean energy is our long-term commitments. And we want to work for an industry which is emission-free and characterized by equality and diversity. And we've launched 2 long-term plans up to 2030 to govern us in that respect. In terms of targets, what we're setting is 30% carbon emissions reduction by 2030, so 30 by 30, and zero emissions or net zero by 2050. And that's with 2019 as baseline. Inequality, 30% is also the magic number, but the timeline is shorter. So our ambition is to have 30% share female leaders, management, and board of directors by end of next year. And we recently reached our target of having a first female captain on board one of our ships. Hopefully not the last. When it comes to Nynäshamn to Ventspils, we're happy to introduce that we're right in the middle of a fleet renewal process. And this is part of what the offering for a ship owner is, introducing new, larger, hopefully, and definitely more efficient ships. So as you can see, between the previous ships, Stena Flavia on the Stena Scandica, which is sailing right now, and at the end, the new E-Flexer, which is currently under construction in China. We are increasing the size of the ships and thereby also the emissions per unit. This is an estimate on the carbon intensity for the new E-Flexer compared to the previous versions. Of course, the best we can do for the environment is also to fill the ships up so that we have a per unit even more efficient route between Latvia and Sweden. But the new ships that we're introducing next year is not only bigger, they're also more efficient. The E-Flexer class is a series of 5 ships for Stena Line, but in total it's so far 12 ships on order, also being sold to other operators and handled by our sister company, Stena Ro-Ro. And as you can see, there is a number of smart initiatives on board the ship. We're using biodegradable lubrication oils. We have a anti-fouling paint using Selektope, which is an organic and copper-free biorepellent. The ships have shoreside electricity connections installed. So we're hoping to have shoreside electricity also in Ventspils going forward. And the engines are diesel electric, so they are prepared for conversions to battery hybrids. And my last slide going forward. So what is next then for Stena Line? How will we continue to lower our carbon footprint? Well, there are a couple of areas of focus, and one is in the short term, increasing efficiency, and doing that by utilizing all the tools that we have in our toolbox, such as hull coating, propellers, different types of technical installations, wind propulsion, etc. We also work with the crew that we have on board, giving them digital tools to increase their possibility to operate each sailing in the most efficient way. Methanol, I mentioned we have 1 ship. We're evaluating whether we can upgrade and convert more ships to dual fuel methanol propulsion. And we took one interesting step earlier this year when we did the first trial voyage using blue methanol from a EU research project called FreshMe. And that methanol was produced by electrolysis and recycled carbon from steel production. And finally, future is electric. I mentioned shore power. We today have 14 ships equipped with shore power. We have 1 battery hybrid. Before we launch a fully electric ship, I think we will see more hybrids on the water, and they can be big or small. The current one we have is 1 megawatt hour, and we have looked on installation as big as 10 megawatt hours as well. So electrification in the whole transport system and shipping is no exception there. So I think that was my 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Mr. Levenhaupt, thank you very much for this presentation. You certainly demonstrated that the devil is in the detail when you're going for very many different kinds of sustainability goals, and that Stena Line is certainly well on its way. And as I'm a regular customer on your ferries, I'm just delighted to see that the environment that I'm traveling on is as sustainable as it currently can be. But I was taken with your slide that illustrates that success to attain the sustainability goals for Stena Line are equally balanced between energy and equality. And the seeking equality on every level of the organization slide is essentially a roadmap to diversity in management and teams with an inclusive workplace free of harassment. Now, that kind of an ambition would be very unusual for most companies in the Baltic. Why is that so explicitly included in your sustainability strategy?
If you look on our business, as in maritime, I think there is something like 2.5% of all seafarers which are female. Obviously, that's leaving out a large portion of talent and knowledge from the workforce. So going forward, I think maritime and shipping can do a lot better by being an attractive workplace for females in general, but also increasing the diversity in our companies. We really want to strive for being an employer where you can thrive regardless of race and background, and nationality, etc. And we think for us it's important that we can attract talent from the whole workplace and not only parts of it.
Okay, thank you very much. And I will now turn to the next great Nordic shipping company, Samskip, and introduce Are Groten, the regional director for Samskip in Norway, to present his rather cogent view of how we could address the Green Deal challenge of 2030 and 2050 in the region. Mr. Groten, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me. I was told that my presentation would be remotely operated by the organizers here, so I hope that's correct.
Yes, it is.
Very good. Okay, first of all, impressive presentation by Eric, and being a shipping guy myself, it's of course great to see that a company like Stena is taking this more than seriously, I would say, and really stepping up the game, as with many other shipping companies around. Now, I have also 10 minutes, so I'll try to keep track of time, but do help me if I'm oversliding here. Samskip is, yes, we are seen as a shipping company, which we are, but we are also so much more. Samskip is in essence a multimodal transport company with focus on the pan-European continent as its trading area. And the core business of Samskip is really to move unitized cargo across the continent in the most sustainable way, using all means of transport. And naturally, on certain routes, a ship is both necessary and a natural way of transporting. But the major revenue in the company is actually not sea related. So if you could change to the next page. Now, I'm not sort of speaking here on behalf of Samskip as such, but I'm more from an industry point of view, and where the transport companies needs to take their share of reaching the overall goal, which from an EU point of view, they have called Fit for 55. Meaning that EU is committed to reduce emissions by 55% before 2030. So that's 9 years from now, and time is running. Obviously, transport, not only sea transport, but transport industry itself has a big share of the current emissions and need to take drastic measures to help the overall community to reach this goal. Next. So why am I here as representing Samskip in Norway? It's simply because I think within the European countries, Norway is really taking a forefront in the green shift when it comes to emission-free transport, and then with particular focus on marine transport. And also, when being in Norway, it's more or less all about hydrogen as the next fuel to use on the sea. But when you go further south in Europe or Eastern Europe, hydrogen is not mentioned so much as an alternative fuel. And why is hydrogen then so high on the agenda in Norway? It's simply because of Norway's access to clean energy, because making hydrogen is demanding a lot of energy, and Norway has substantial hydro or water-based access to electricity. So that's why I'm representing Samskip in this, being a Norwegian. You can go to the next. So evolution, and I think Eric had also a good slide on this, that we from a shipping point of view, we need to continue. We have been taking too long in the evolution of shipping. it's a long time since new technology came into the shipping industry. And time has certainly come for the next step. A little bit back to Samskip, what have they done? Time being, we are not as far as Stena Line here, but we have recently acquired LNG propelled ships. But of course, we all know that LNG is still fossil fueled and is by no means emission free. So we have to take the next step. And you see a ship on the right-hand side there, which is something that we call a sea shuttle, and that is actually propelled by hydrogen. We are now at the verge of actually placing orders for such ships, and we hope to see them floating and in operation before 2025. Next slide. So again, why is Samskip taking part in this? And as I said, we are not only a shipping company, but we do transport across Europe. It's the network that brings us to the forefront of such a project. We want to take a mix of all the different ships we have in the fleet today and convert it to emission-free ships where we can. Obviously, this is not possible everywhere, but certainly, as you can see from the route map on the side here, there are certainly routes where we can put in these shuttles. And unlike Stena, who's thinking big, I saw the ships there, they are fairly big on very specific routes. We are looking more from a network perspective and rather look at smaller ships in shorter routes with a high frequency. Next one. And as I said, it's not all about ships. It's all about moving the container as emission-free as possible from one point to the other. A good friend of mine refers to a port as or shipping as taking cargo from where it's not coming from to a place it's not going to, which is correct because the cargo does not originate in the port and it's not destined for the port. So if you only think the sea leg, then you have only done half the job. So Samskip is already, of course, a major player in moving cargo from pure trucking over to multimodal transportation. And it's only when we have the ships in place on emission-free fuels, we have the trucks in place with emission-free fuels, and the same goes with not only the train, but also the terminal handling in each port. And one of the first speakers here, I think it was the minister that mentioned about infrastructure. And of course, here, the governments and the public affairs of this world needs to take their share of that part. But we can't do all at once, so let's start with the ship, which you mentioned is contributing greatly to the emissions. Next. This is just an example. We saw the route map of Stena. We have seen the existing route map of Samskip. We are, as I said, at the verge of placing orders to build ships. And it's actually in the Baltic region and the Scandinavian region we are thinking to introduce this firstly. Again, we are, unlike others who are looking into electric propulsion, we are looking into hydrogen propulsion. And by trading in this area, which is rather what we call short sea, is of course that we believe that we can run on hydrogen in this area simply because it's available in Norway. So the further away you go from Norway, the harder it's going to get hold of clean hydrogen. So this is why we are using these trading routes as our first examples. Next. So the heading of the presentation is Off the Road into the Future. And this is not something that we will start doing. This is what Samskip is all about. And already doing every day, every week, to convert transportation from road haulage onto multimodal ways of transportation. So that we can do while we are building ships, while we are doing R&D, while we are figuring out how to solve the problem, we can already now, and we are doing, starting the journey for less emissions. And this slide here is just giving an example of the CO2 saving we can do already today with existing tonnage and existing technology. And by the time the sea shuttle comes into play, or the Stena ferries come into play, this will be zero in the end. Next. So Samskip's contribution to this time being is that we will introduce not only an energy efficient and zero emission ready ship, but we will also look into autonomous cargo handling. And that's back to the sustainability question, where we see that a lot of the resources in a port-to-port transport goes away in handling the cargo on and off the ship. Now for Stena, that's easy because you just drive it on and drive it off. Well, for our sake, we lift it on and we lift it off. Currently, that's being done by human hands, sitting in a crane, while we see that to take it one step further, we will also give that over to robots. More efficient and more sustainable. Next. And that's it.
Well, Mr. Grotten, that was the most amazing ship, the last one with the 2 leaves. So we are going somehow in the right direction. You have a very interesting presentation, and especially since it highlights hydrogen. I've lived a fair bit in Norway and know what the movement towards a more sustainable and greener society is like in Norway, and clearly you have water everywhere. And even in Latvia, we have a fair bit of water, and I have actually hydro, generated power here as well. These days, we even have a couple of hydrogen cell-fueled Toyotas running around in the streets of Riga. And I remember testing some of them in Stavanger, for that matter, quite a few years ago. My question actually to you would be, how confident are you in hydrogen as a mature technology? Is it green enough, so to speak, in Norway or for Norwegians? Where are we in the hydrogen, cell development story?
Well, I mean, as a fuel, it's a proven technology. It works, and the only thing that is still under R&D is, of course, the safety aspect around hydrogen, the danger of explosions and so on. But then again, if you look at all the other fuels we are using in our different vehicles nowadays, that is also a danger, and we have come around that over the years. So I think that it needs to mature a little bit more on the safety side of things, but not more than we're already talking about self-driving cars.
Sure.
And here we are also just talking about something that needs to mature in people's heads. Hence why we are also looking at the autonomous cargo handling side, because it will require less human beings in the proximity of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So that will also take the risk, the safety risk, further down. But that's where I think we stand. That we need to continue to work closely with the IMOs of this world, maritime authorities, and classification societies, in order to foolproof the safety aspect around hydrogen. As a fuel, it's already a proven concept.
I know that in the European Union, at least in the Transport Commission, you also have the different transport corridors as they have been identified, and there's one certainly that focuses mainly on marine, on the blue corridor, as you would call it, and therefore I assume that the movement to more sustainable energy sources are well identified there, which we will soon hear from our next speakers. But one of the other more important slides I think that you showed were the seamless sort of door-to-door cargo services. In this whole, I know this also from the railway business, you know, and how difficult it is in heads for people to move into the seamless thinking that it's not just I need to order a car, you know, a railway, a ship, a whatever. Where do you think the winners and losers will be in establishing the seamless cargo delivery in the future?
I mean, it has taken some skip 2 decades to build what is there today, and it is a puzzle, and you know, it's a mix of assets you own, and it's a mix of assets you rent or share. So it is a complex thing, but that's our job, to make it easy for the end user to be able to order a container from door to door as easy as it is to order a truck.
Tusen takk, Åre Gråten. Thank you very much for the time with us, and thank you very much for following clearly the Nordic Baltic Business Forum.
Thank you as well.
Now, our final session is dedicated to the role of energy producers in reducing CO2 emissions and introducing alternative renewable energy sources with interventions from 2 countries that have been working with fossil fuels for a very long time and are now swiftly seeking solutions in renewable energy concepts. We shall start in Finland, where it is my honor to introduce Dr. Teemu Sarjovaara, Neste's Head of Research and Development, Products and Applications. Dear audience, kindly recognize that Neste, as a global energy provider, has also been one of the top energy companies seeking and deploying renewable energy as quickly as safely possible. And let me remind you that it's still possible to pose a question on Slido. Dr. Sarjovaara, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction and also for the opportunity to join the event. So, going to the topic, we work, or our roots are in transportation energy, and the question is how to decarbonize that. And let's go to the next slide. Neste in brief, I think the most important things that I would like to highlight from our company, that we are currently the leader in the renewable diesel production and also in the sustainable aviation fuel. In the world, we are proud that we have been ranked as 4th most sustainable company in the world, and we have been there on that list for more than 12 years, 13 years already or something like that. And that's pretty remarkable if you consider that we are really traditional oil refining company from the previous decades. And also that we are in the middle of quite intensive investment campaign, increasing our capacity for the next years. But maybe that's about Neste in brief, and we go to the next slide, that because we are in the energy sector, and transportation is one of the main sources, of the biggest sources of the climate emissions, that what we at Neste want to commit to tackle the climate change, and also what is there kind of behind that we are able to be there on the top most sustainable companies in the world, although that we are working with also today with the crude oil. But what we are about to do to keep the pace or even accelerate the pace. We can see that we can do that for the sustainability and for the climate. We have kind of different approaches. One question is, of course, our own carbon footprint. Our Porvoo refinery here in Finland is, by the matter of fact, one of the biggest CO2 emitters in Finland. I think we are number 2 or 3 statistically. So we have huge responsibility here in Finland in that sense. And how to reduce that emission. And we have made a promise to reach carbon neutral production here at Porvoo by 2035. And that is really a huge challenge. Huge challenge requires a lot of new technology to introduce and a lot of investments also. The pathway, let's say the roadmap is rather clear, but there's still a lot of open questions also that how to reach that. But that is something that we are committed, and the road trip to that goal has already started. Another big topic is the whole value chain, carbon footprint, and carbon kind of emission intensity of the sold products. And we are also working heavily there to reduce the carbon footprint with our suppliers and partners to reduce the emissions across our whole value chain. But maybe one of the most important, or maybe the most important reason why we are ranked as fourth most sustainable company is what we have done as our handprint, meaning that how much we have helped our customers to reduce their emissions in the past, today, and for the future. We have made a commitment that with our products, renewable and circular products, our customers would be able to reduce at minimum 20 million tons of CO2 equivalent emissions by 2030. And that requires a lot of new production capacity for us. That's not fine-tuning the current production. But let's go forward, the next slide. And specifically what it means here in Porvoo, as mentioned, that we are really one of the biggest refineries here in whole Baltic area. So the amount of emissions that we generate is unfortunately rather big. But we are heavily or seriously there to cut them down, and by 2030 already, as a kind of midterm promise, we are committed that we will cut the 50% of the CO2 emissions from Porvoo. And as mentioned in the earlier slide, we have also further commitments for 2035. And also what it means, for instance, in Porvoo for our fossil refinery, that we have committed to have a share of renewable and circular feedstock there, replacing fossil crude oil more than 10% by 2030. So meaning that our refinery products will have less carbon intensity in the future as we replace the fossil crude oil with other feedstocks. And I think then we can go to the next slide. And just kind of example where we are now. Our current spearhead products is our renewable diesel, Neste MY. It's sold in 28 countries across the globe. In some countries with our own brand, with some other countries with our customers' brand. And today we have more than 600 filling stations. You can buy our Neste MY product as a neat 100% renewable diesel, 500 of those in EU and 100 in US, there mainly on West Coast, California, Oregon, and so on. And more or less more than 4,000 customers, business-to-business customers, are using our products today. But that is today. What in the future? And if we go to the next slide, that we saw that current production, there is still possibilities to grow. There is still possibilities to grow the feedstock pool and also production volumes, but that's not, let's say, enough for the climate. So we see that we have to go from the current fatty acid and next PTL technology that we are using to produce renewable products to further. And what we see there as the next steps, the co-processing, as we call it, meaning that as in previous slide I mentioned that we are planning to use circular and renewable feedstock in our Porvoo fossil refinery. That will happen already during the next few years. After that, the next step will be the chemical recycling. They will start to use liquefied waste plastic as a refinery feed, as again reducing the crude oil use at our refinery. Then we have a thing or kind of innovation platforms running up at the moment, and the idea behind those that they are kind of internal startup platforms for the new feedstock pools beyond the current technologies. There we are looking algae, for instance, lignocellulosic waste streams, municipal solid waste, but also big thing there is renewable hydrogen and Power-to-X. And there is a huge potential for the future. Then we can go to the next one. But the question is that as we hear quite often in the public conversation that it's electrification, especially in the road transport, why we believe that there is still need to develop new solutions also for the fuel markets. And here, if we start looking at the global crude oil consumption is roughly that 4,500 million tons annually. And then we can go to the next slide. Transportation uses roughly 60%, 2/3 of that. The rest of goes to the energy, petrochemistry, plastics, and so on. But here, if we focus here on this 2/3, 60% part, that is if we want to have a clean transportation, we should get rid of all those blue boxes and replace with them with something else. And if we take the next slide, we see that how it's divided on the different segments, that we can say that the road transport is by far the biggest there in the middle, and the shipping and aviation roughly equal size, and roughly we can say maybe 1/3 of the whole transport sector CO2 emissions and also the crude oil use. But let's go forward to the next slide. And how it looks today. There is a very small light bluish half of the box there in the middle of the slide. That represents how much last year we had globally on road electrical vehicles, 10 million roughly, and they replaced roughly 6 million tons of crude oil. And that's how it's how big it is when comparing the whole usage of the crude oil transportation. And on the other hand, we see that on the left corner there's a green boxes, which indicates how much we used last year renewable biofuels globally. And we can say that it's remarkably big, but of course it's not that visible because most of that biofuels are sold as a blending components with rather low percentage, like E5 gasoline or B7 diesel, with some few percent of biofuel blended that not visible to customers. But that's remarkable already by volume. But the question, of course, is that what is the future? The electrification is going to ramp up quickly, that's for sure. And now we can go to the next slide. But if we took, for instance, IEA's Internal Energy Agency's forecast for 2040, they forecast that there will be 600 million electrical vehicles in 20 years, more or less. And that replaces those boxes there on the right side. But on the other side, we see already that if we go to the new feedstock pools like lignos, algae, municipal solid waste, for instance, there's remarkable potential in the renewable fuels that can be taken into use. And that is the reason why Neste believes in this business and wants to invest to develop new feedstock pools and new technologies that we are able to use them as a feedstock for fuel products. But what is needed here? Smart regulation. And that is the challenge at the moment, that regulation landscape is rather complex, and generally it's not always that positive for the renewable fuels, and that might challenge that how big part of the full potential we are able to use in the future. And let's go forward. And that was my presentation in a nutshell. I hope I pretty much kept the schedule.
Dr. Sarjavaara, I'd like to thank you very much. You, in fact, highlighted probably something that one could spend a whole Nordic Business Forum on specifically, which is the fact that fossil fuels are not going to disappear overnight. and quite the contrary, we need to be able to look at other solutions to maybe alleviate some parts of fossil fuel usage. But at the end of the day, it is actually about how to reduce emissions and how to make fossil fuels cleaner in very simplistic terms. So thank you very much for today. It was wonderful to see what Neste has achieved over in these years in R&D for cleaner fuels. And then, by no means planned, as I have spent a significant part of my life with and in Norway, I'm tickled pink, actually, to end our Nordic Business Forum interventions with the renowned Norwegian energy partners to hear about sharing Norwegian competence with international energy needs. Jørgen Brandt Theodorsen, the final floor today is yours.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the nice introduction. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to talk about offshore wind as a renewable energy sources, and I'm going to talk about Norwegian capabilities and technology and the potential collaboration between Latvia, the Baltics, and Norway within energy and specifically offshore wind. I hope you are able to see my screen now. I'm going to talk about the Norwegian offshore expertise and how that add value to the global offshore wind. So Norway, where are we coming from? We are coming from hydrogen. We are coming from oil and gas, of course, that most of you know. And we have a rich history in terms of energy and especially renewable energy. And now we are moving also into offshore wind, which I'm going to talk primarily about today. So we have 50 years of offshore experience gained from the exploration on the Norwegian continental shelf, which started up in the late 60s. And we have adopted a lot of this technology and capabilities into industries such as the shipping industry. That's why we have a lot of Norwegian ship owners also working quite globally. So a little bit about NOWAP and what we do and how we are organized. So we work with everything within energy, or everything covering everything from solar, hydrogen, oil and gas, offshore wind, and energy systems. Everything that has to do with energy, we are involved in that. We have 300 plus member companies which are working within this, which are partner of Norwegian energy partners, and our main goal is to increase the Norwegian exports within these technologies and industries. And how do we do that? We map, like you see here on the picture here, we map the capabilities of these companies, and we put them in. This is taken from our website, actually, www.novap.com. So here you can go in, you can click on these icons, and then you find the capabilities of the Norwegian companies within safety, digitalization, engineering, and etc. We also have a web page called norwegiansuppliers.no, which has over 700 technologies and showcasing this supplier's capability. So I encourage you all to check that out. So this is a little bit interesting. This is the share of electricity generation by technology in the European Union. I've borrowed this slide from Wind Europe. So this is in a sustainable development scenario. So as you can see, offshore wind is increasing rapidly towards 2030. 50 in terms of the share of the electricity supply. And as you can see, together with nuclear, coal, and other power resources, wind is by far the most aggressive one going forward. So who's driving this? Who's driving this? What is the drivers behind this? This is driven by governments and institutions, of course, and every day you can read about it in newspapers. You have US now is coming online with a lot of planned capacity. The Baltics, of course, is coming. Poland has released 5.9 gigawatts of offshore wind, and they plan to add another 5 gigawatts of offshore wind. Norway, of course, is coming with 4.5 gigawatts on stream. So capacity is increasing. The UK is aggressive, as the Germany is coming online. So it's a lot of things happening globally. And this is a little bit interesting. Amazon just got into a power purchase agreement with Ørsted on a 10 years contract, buying 250 megawatts of power from Ørsted on their Bochum Riffen Field 3 outside of Germany, which is, I think, is extremely interesting move made by such global companies, and we see others are going towards this trend as well. So, like I recently referred to, the capacity is increasing all over the globe. If you go 14 months back, it was 250 gigawatts, which were online in terms of development projects. Now we are talking about close to 550 gigawatts. So it's been adding 250 gigawatts just in 14 months. So the pace is just incredible in this market. And a lot of new markets is coming online, emerging markets, not just the one you hear a lot about, the UK, the Germany, and mature markets, but now you see Brazil is planning on entering this market. Australia is planning to go in as well. US is, like I mentioned, is coming on stream with a lot of planned capacity, and China is rapidly increasing their capacity. Japan, Vietnam, and the list just go on and on. And we also see this in the Baltics as well. Estonia are, of course, planning together with Latvia capacity increase. Poland, like I mentioned, Denmark, which were the first ones in this market. The first wind farm were up in the early 90s. And Sweden has just started the discussion of increasing this. So it's a lot of things happening on a global scale. So it's fair to call it a boom. I think that's fair to say, with all this capacity coming on stream. And also hydrogen, which is a hot topic nowadays, and how can we kind of implement this with wind power. This was in 2004 on a small island outside of Norway called Utsira. They started this has been done for a long time, and Utsira is actually one of the area Norway is going to open up now for offshore wind. 1.5 gigawatts is coming on stream, and that's going to be floating wind, just floating wind. And this is also a bit interesting. This is the energy island which Denmark has released. Belgium has also released plans for this, and Netherlands has also come on stream with plans. But I think Denmark is in the forefront of this for the moment. And they're talking about building this artificial island 80 kilometers off the coast and connect with several offshore wind farms. So this is one artificial island, and they are talking about doing the same on Bornholm, having a capacity of 2 gigawatts. The one illustrated on the picture, I think it's about 3 gigawatt output they are thinking about implementing. So this is really interesting going forward. But of course it will with huge investments needs to go into this if this is going to be materialized. And this is also a conversation which is rather hot on the topic during the time. It's the power to X and interconnection between grid connections and kind of grid connection between countries and borders. And this is also which is a discussion which is coming more and more online and being more and more relevant. So how are we going to achieve the ambitious goal made by the stakeholders and policymakers in reference to developing sustainable renewable sources of energy, such as offshore wind, on a journey to a decarbonized world?
Jørgen, I hate to tell you, you only have 2 minutes left.
Yeah, we'll be fast. So
Okay.
competition and innovation will drive down the cost. As you can see on the picture here, this is offshore support vessel. They're talking about doing this more and more autonomously. So the smaller vessel on the left-hand side on the picture is remotely controlled, and solutions are coming more and more on stream. And Norway use a lot of digitalization on the Johan Castberg field, which produced 650,000 barrels a day. Most of the platforms are remotely operated from land. This we will try to implement in the offshore wind as well. On the installation side, there is a lot of Norwegian capabilities and a lot of known owners. On the foundation side, Norway has installed Hywind, which probably some of you have heard about, and now we're in the process of installing Hywind Tampen to decarbonize the oil and gas platforms. So there's a lot of things happening on the foundation side as well, and a lot of technology coming out of Norway. Also on the substation side. The substation on Doggerbank are going to be delivered by Avo. On the safety side, Norwegian has a rich history coming from the oil and gas side and being working 50 years in the maritime environment to help the producing assets in the North Sea. Same on the OMV operations. There's a lot of things happening there. This also links up to the digitalization part. And also companies such as Subsea 7 can do everything from installation to removal, so the full scope from full lifetime cycle of the wind farm. And this is only a short journey from Norway. So if you look at the capacity coming online, North Sea is in Europe is by far the most with 80 gigawatts, but on the secondary is Baltic Sea with 52 gigawatts in development phase. So this is really interesting in terms of numbers and a potential collaboration between Norway and the rest of the Baltic region and Latvia in particular as well. So just to summarize and to end my presentation, we're going to have a International Energy Forum Day in beginning of November, where we'll go through all the energy questions within offshore wind, hydrogen, oil and gas, CCS, etc. So I hope I can see some of you in real person in 3D at that event. And if you want to know more, please visit our website on norweb.com and particularly on the wind side. So thank you for that.
Jørgen, thank you very much. I will add 2 things. Number 1, there was supposed to be possibly a video shown here from the Norwegian Energy Partners. I assume it may be on your website, and it's a fabulous video about that sort of summarizes things in a very sexy manner, I would say, that you were presenting to us. The second thing is that from all the way today, there's one thing that I envy all of the Nordic countries regularly for, and that is that you are all highly competitive with each other in terms of countries and even companies, but you are able to master collaboration and strong collaboration anyways, as companies, as suppliers, as different kinds of concept developers in an excellent way. And we've seen that even just in the last 2 interventions, sort of from Finland to Norway. But when I saw the list of countries you operate in, I was a wee bit disappointed that neither Lithuania, Latvia, nor Estonia were to be found in your lists. How can that be changed?
It has to be with the capacity, and right now I think pool is a little bit further ahead when it comes to the planning of offshore wind. They have already 5.9 gigawatts on stream. So, but of course, we will increase our capacity once the offshore development will and other energy resources will take up. But of course, I wish to have people in every country in the world covering everything, but we need to prioritize as well and coordinate our resources. But the reason why I'm sitting here talking today is because we think that these countries that all of the countries mentioned, and also the rest of the Baltic with Finland and Sweden, and also taking the energy islands coming into play, I think it's a really interesting market to follow in the future as well. And also, if you look into the energy mix of the different countries, maybe Norway has value to add in terms of renewable energy sources.
Tusen tack, Jörgen, and thank you very much for sharing all of this with all of us. So herewith, our second forum dedicated to the EU Green Deal and Nordic Baltic partnership comes to an end. In our first presentation, we saw Ursula von der Leyen's clear position that the European Green Deal is Europe's new growth strategy while developing in parallel the blue economy. I don't know about you, but it seems to me that the Nordic countries are certainly speeding ahead in the blue economy, in addition to seeking and finding new energy solutions. We've shared an inspiring 2 hours by brushing the surface of key components needed to reduce our CO2 footprint really fast. On a personal level, I'm not convinced yet that the relevant authorities in Latvia truly comprehend in a collaborative way what it takes to not only gain access to EU Green Deal monies, but deliver on needed commitments. I trust that this Nordic Business Forum will have brought the key players together to forge closer professional collaboration to be fit for 55. And in closing, a very special thank you, Milziks Paldies, to all the technical people and organizing team in the background who made sure I look good and we were well connected today. Keep safe and goodbye.